everybody, welcome back to Front Page Fitness. It is me, Eric Trexler, joined by the Dr. Lauren Colenso-Semple. Lauren, how are we doing tonight?
I made a terrible, terrible mistake yesterday.
You made a terrible mistake yesterday. Why don't you tell us all what happened?
I commented to a post on Threads.
Okay.
Have you been on Threads?
No, actually. Threads was interesting. It was going to overtake Twitter and make Twitter obsolete for about 4 days. And then that is ultimately not how things ended up panning out. But so I don't think I've actually, I could be wrong, don't hold me to this, but I don't believe I've ever commented on Threads. But what happened? Is it like the thing you commented on was chaotic, or just the platform itself?
So somebody made a comment that, like men have no place, participating or in a comment section or any.
Lauren, something has happened. I cannot hear you at all. There you go. Hear you again.
Oh, hello. Yeah, so I mentioned that, well, it's not very productive to dismiss all men from the conversation. And it's something that I've talked about before because I think while there are certainly a lot of toxic men on the internet, there are also men who are, promoting good information and being helpful and then are kind of dismissed outright because they are men. So that was really the only point that I was making. And it did not go over well on Threads. It went over very, very poorly. I was called a Karen. I was told to take my head out of my ass. I'm not a girl's girl. A lot of things.
Yeah, and did anyone comment on your snake tongue in the process of that, or was that kind of left to the side and now it was just more of a Karen type genre of critique?
No, it was just more that like I'm a toxic female and that I should never ever speak about women's health ever again.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. What I've tended to find is I'm getting better at kind of identifying things that are likely to go over poorly. And I remember in one instance, we don't have to get into the details of which one, but I was like, someone will find a very predictable way to get offended about this. And you seemed a little bit skeptical, and then it ended up playing out exactly the way I thought. So I am a lurker of the internet. I have a decent sense of how things go out there. And I value my precious, precious mental space too much to jump into to put my face into the buzzsaw that is commenting on the internet. So I appreciate that you have the bravery to do it. And I, of course, know that it is not good for you and is a purely negative thing in your life. But either way, congratulations for doing that, and sorry for the inevitable consequence that is fully predictable.
Right.
So let's talk about a way in which you've disappointed me recently. Are we ready to have
Oh,
that conversation?
I feel like that is a theme, a running theme of this podcast. So sure.
Correct. So it was not long ago that I brought to your attention because about 1,000 people in our audience messaged me. A pretty big breakthrough on the culinary side. We talk about science a lot as it pertains to health and fitness. We don't talk a lot about pure food science per se, but this was a big breakthrough, and I think when those things happen, we should certainly address them. And there was a huge breakthrough for the Front Page Fitness family, myself included. And I'm going to go ahead and show that on my screen and let everyone enjoy this with me. I don't want to gatekeep, as they say. So it says, I tried Taco Bell's Baja Blast Pie and lived to tell the tale. And if you are listening only, I'm sorry, because you're missing out on quite a multimedia experience. The only way I can describe this, how it looks, Lauren, is if you were 9 years old and you were in whatever grade that is, and in class they said, you need to make a drawing and it needs to be a pie. But in that pie crust, you need to find a way with purely the use of colors and textures to make it look like nuclear waste. And so, like, I don't believe that this is necessarily what nuclear waste actually looks like. I'm sure it's just very boring and highly irradiated. It probably just looks like rock. But someone will fact check me on that because that's totally very easy to Google. Please don't bombard me with, like, a bunch of corrections about what actual nuclear waste looks like. But anyway, we're looking at a kind of, I guess I would call it like a fluorescent teal, which perfectly matches the color scheme of Taco Bell's Baja Blast, which is like a flavor of Mountain Dew that is was specialized for Taco Bell. Now, I've talked on the podcast before about how this is a very special flavor. Baja Blast, first of all, regular Mountain Dew is excellent. We talked about the history of Mountain Dew on the show. Code Red is excellent. I think they had one called Live Wire that was orange, which was very good. Baja Blast is teal. I don't know how else it's teal flavored, but it's very, very, very good. So Mountain Dew really doesn't miss when they come out with these flavors, and I am thrilled to hear that now they have turned it into a pie. Now, Lauren, I sent you a video of a person reviewing it, and they were very critical, much like you would have been. And they actually gave it a very, very positive review. They said it was light, it was very refreshing. They likened it to something like a lemon meringue. You, for whatever reason, have decided that you are anti-Baja Blast pie. So why don't you go ahead and make your case after I've made mine?
Okay, so I went to El Salvador maybe 8, 10 years ago with my mom, and there is a volcano in El Salvador, which is very cool. I've sent you a link to an image of said volcano, and it reminds me exactly of what this pie looks like. And you definitely accused me of many things. I believe xenophobia was one of the claims that you made
Yeah.
when I rejected the pie. Um, I don't understand a pie that is paying homage to a soda of any kind. Like, I don't want a Coca-Cola pie. I don't want the Sprite pie. I don't want the Mountain Dew pie. And so it's not like I'm personally attacking Baja Blast, even though I literally never heard of it until we discussed it on this podcast. But I just think, drinks are for drinking and food is for
For
eating, and
fooding.
we don't need to intermingle.
Okay, so I'm going to let the people decide. Up on the screen, now you're seeing Lauren's volcano, and you're seeing the Baja Blast. It's honestly not terrible at all. It's a pretty close match. So I will give you credit for that. But here's the thing, Lauren. You're such an elitist. I think this is because this is an offshoot of you getting your wine certification. You just can't enjoy the simple, nice things in life like a good Baja Blast pie. And I do think that it's an elitist thing because if I told you I had a citrus-based pie and I called it, lemon meringue or key lime pie, you'd be all in for the refreshing flavor. But I call it a Baja Blast, an homage to either a Mountain Dew flavor and or the Baja region of Mexico, and you reject it outright. And I think that I think the way I put it was that I feel sad for you. And I believe I told you that the way I really feel is a mixture of pity and contempt. In that you have walled off the finer things of life and created this very isolating world of limitation when in reality you could just live with abundance and enjoy these pies. So
Do you live near a Taco Bell, and can you taste test?
now, big fact check there. I don't know if they actually have them at Taco Bell's. Have you looked into that?
Okay.
I was thinking this was more of a direct to the store thing. Yeah, it says it's available. It's available
I mean,
nationwide.
direct to the store. Where would it be if not at Taco Bell?
Okay, in store only, but you have to buy the whole pie. So it's $19.99 for the full pie. I guess they're not doing taste tests. So honestly, I think I may be curious enough. I might make a bad decision this weekend and try to find one. I will look into that, and if I can find one, I will make some form of content surrounding it. Does that sound like a fair deal?
It does. And I need to just correct myself because somebody in the chat mentioned coffee ice cream,
Yeah.
which is a beverage, and coffee ice cream is very good.
Yeah, and I think I've had like chai tea flavored ice cream as well. So yeah, I mean you're really starting out
I'm sorry.
based on
It's
the
not a good
chat.
day for me.
Basically, you started out with your mic too loud, and also you're just whiffing on all the substantive material. So you
Right.
are absolutely just not having a good showing. Do we want to continue, or should we pack it up?
I think I should just sign off.
Yeah, we
You
might
should
want
just
to
take this solo.
try again in a week at this point. But anyway,
Yeah.
I tell you what,
Christ.
the best thing to do, like I used to play baseball back in the day. When you're in a slump, you just got to keep swinging. You got to keep trying, get the bat off your shoulder, rebuild that confidence. So I think we should push forward. And I don't know, who knows? Maybe we will independently try the Baja Blast pie. Honestly, though, being completely serious, when I found out that they sold this by the can at my grocery store with a zero sugar variety, I was absolutely floored, and I have some in my garage at this moment. All right, Lauren, let's dig into the big stuff. People have more important things going on than sodas and pies and soda pies. So, we have an FDA announcement related to your wheelhouse here. So, I actually just saw something about this as we were about to go on air. It was something about what the FDA is, I think, removing a warning from that was like kind of a standard boilerplate warning. They called it. Here's a quote: "The FDA is announcing today that it will remove the misleading black box warnings from all HRT products." That's a direct quote from HHS Secretary RFK Jr. So, Lauren, can you give a little context? What are these warnings? Why are they there? And is this good, bad, or irrelevant?
Yeah, so I think there certainly is a need to address this. Certainly, experts on this topic have been calling for reevaluation for a long time, but they missed the mark here because they decided to remove all warnings associated with heart disease, with cancer, with hormone therapy, estrogen-based hormone therapy. And this goes back to the Women's Health Initiative, where they kind of inadvertently found that there was an association. But then, upon retrospective analyses, they realized, well, there's a big timing factor here. So it's about, when are you initiating it? And then in subsequent years, it was, well, what type of hormone therapy are we using? And is it local or is it systemic? And are you combining an estrogen based therapy with a progestogen? And so there's it's like very multi-layered here. And then there are also, risk factors based on your health history. So yes, it's important that more women have access to and understand the potential benefits of hormone therapy for menopause related symptoms. But what this did, unfortunately, is a complete 180 on what the state of the evidence is. And unfortunately, and I did watch the press conference, and he said, well, we need to dismiss the findings of the Women's Health Initiative and other observational studies because they didn't find a statistically significant association, not association, a statistically significant finding that hormone therapy causes cancer or hormone therapy causes heart disease, but then goes on to cite many observational studies and make the claim that hormone therapy is going to slash your risk of heart disease by 50% and Alzheimer's and cognitive decline, et cetera, et cetera. So just from a scientific perspective, it was really, really disingenuous, and I fear the ramifications of this.
Do you think that because let me play devil's advocate here, if I may. And I love doing this about topics I know nothing about. It makes me feel very safe, very comfortable, especially during live recordings.
Great.
So these black box warnings, these would be on the product. These products would be by prescription only, correct?
Correct.
So do you think it's realistic to think that a lot of people were getting prescriptions for this from their provider, then seeing the warning on the box, and then revisiting their decision to be on it at that point? Like, don't you think we need to do like a better job more on the like education front in the clinic before it gets to that point? Because like I know with me, and again, I'm not saying that it's good, bad, or neutral that they're changing the warning, but like for me, I couldn't tell you if any prescription medication I've ever taken had a warning, and if it did, I probably would have said I'm sure they've all got all sorts of warnings. Yeah, we've all seen in America at least, uh, you know, uh, advertisements for prescription drugs. Like they run commercials in America. I know in some countries that sounds like the craziest concept you've ever heard, but if you're an American, you're sitting down at the TV and you're getting literal advertisements for pharmaceutical drugs, and they list the 7,000 warnings at the end. So like, do you really think that those warnings were moving the needle much? Like I get the scientific side of it, but from a practical side, do you think this is as big a deal as people are making of it?
Well, I think the big deal is the way that it is represented in the media because of, I mean, we saw what happened with the Women's Health Initiative that had huge ramifications because of the way it was represented in the media. And so
Yeah.
now you're kind of having the opposite effect. So I actually think it's not necessarily about the warning on the label or the box or the insert. It's more about the public perception. And so when we say, uh, that these are safe and approved for this reason in this population, I think that's great. But if we don't say it with the context and nuance of, however, the way people are using this and the different formulas and the way that people are combining different prescriptions and and what, how old are you, and why are we doing this, when you literally say, as they did in this um, press conference, they said, menopause is killing women. Like, so,
Well, isn't that, Lauren? Isn't that just the toughest spot as a woman? Because technically, the most surefire way to avoid menopause is to die young, and yet if you make it to menopause, apparently menopause is going to kill you. Isn't that just? I mean, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
right. And here let's sort of twist the data to say it has all of these benefits
Yeah.
that are unproven. Like,
Okay.
I don't know.
No, I'm getting
I
it. I'm
don't
getting
like
it
it.
now. I'm getting more of the controversy now because it sounds like at first there was kind of a knee jerk reaction that probably overstated some of the risks, and now there's this. We're going back the other way and saying this is incredible, and like you'd be a dummy not to take it, and don't even worry about any kind of risks. Don't worry about like a personalized risk stratification or anything like that. So sounds like an overcorrection that's probably going to fuel a lot of people who just kind of go to their doctor and say, I'd like to dabble in some hormone therapy if you don't mind. Which, yeah,
Right, because not because I have symptoms, but because I heard that, it's gonna
yeah,
save me from heart disease. It's gonna prevent Alzheimer's, and like that data, it very clearly isn't there. The experts on this topic weigh in all the time. Like, if it was there, then they would be saying it was there. So it's very frustrating. I mean, frankly, it's not that surprising given the
yeah.
um, messenger. But and when we make these, and it happens all the time, right? It's like we're talking about 50% of what relative to what. So you talk about your risk factor for a disease, and people make these bold claims that like 50%, 60%, but it's relative to what? It's not an absolute risk. And
Yeah.
that is never appropriately addressed by anyone in the media.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's if I have permission, Lauren, I think it would be appropriate to make this all about men for a moment, if I may.
Sure. Of course.
So this kind of reminds me of you're talking about people who are going to start taking it just because they heard, I'm about that age, might as well, rather than like for actual symptoms. It kind of reminds me of what happened over the past few years with testosterone hormone therapy, where basically you'd see people talking about this either in advertisements or just the vibe on the internet of people saying like, honestly, I know you feel fine, but you don't know how bad you feel, and once you start taking testosterone, you are going to just the vigor, the vitality, the vibrance, any word that starts with a V, that's going to just be pouring out of you once you start taking small doses of testosterone. And yeah, it's one of those things, especially when you're talking about like fatigue. Like, find me a person who's 35 or older who doesn't feel pretty fatigued, like most of the time. Like, it's called like being in your 30s, being in like your peak career stage, having kids, whatever, right? So I can definitely see what you're getting at there. So it sounds like we've had a big swing and a miss, and I think the biggest thing, just in terms of like the fundamentals, right? Sometimes you'll see people who make the right decision with the wrong reason. It's like back when you were a kid who, you're doing a math exam and you had to show your work, and it's like somehow you got the right answer, but your work, you just like drew a picture of a giraffe, and they're like, did you just like copy it? Like, you cannot replicate the success because the path you took here is just absolute nonsense, right? And so I'm not saying necessarily that the decision here was right, but more to the point, you were signaling that like they kind of just gave an incoherent, scientifically nonsensical justification of like, we need to throw out observational data that I don't like, but here's some observational data I do like. And that is ultimately why we made this choice. And, again, whether or not you support, whether you like, dislike, or don't really care too much about this specific decision, I could definitely see why a lot of people who are more scientifically inclined, or at least bothered by the like, I need you to show me that you're applying some kind of rigorous scientific principles to any kind of policy changes that are coming down the pipeline. And to the extent that you see policy changes that don't appear to be rooted in like a really strong, back in the day, Lauren, back when I was a kid, 5 years ago, you would normally like get together a panel of people who maybe do research in the area. They would review it. It'd be very slow. It'd be very methodical. They would probably publish a big like 300-page report and say, we are revising the warning on these, or, we're doing something of that nature. So I definitely see why a lot of people are kind of up in arms about like, hey, let's like slow down and focus on the process here and get the mechanics right. Even if some of those warnings, and I'm not making this claim, but even if some people found them to be a little bit too reactionary to prior work that may not be totally robust.
Especially coming from a administration that has made a lot of claims that aren't evidence-based historically.
Yeah. Lauren, we got somebody taking shots at Canada, a Canadian no less, I believe, or a person undercover as a fake Canadian on YouTube. But they said in Canada, they hint at the benefits. I think this is in reference to pharmaceutical commercials. And then they just say to ask your doctor. So is that true, Lauren? Do they not have the big like 20-minute reel at the end of pharmaceutical commercials that are compressed into like 30 seconds?
I don't have cable TV, so I actually haven't seen one of those ads for a very long time.
Lauren, I
Um,
just want to tell you something real quick. You are not a woman of the people. Okay? You're
okay.
you're disconnected from the television culture. You won't eat a Baja Blast pie. This is going to be bad for our numbers. Like, you are so unrelatable, snake-tongued,
Mhm.
and everything people said about you on television as well. I mean, are you familiar with the idea of a Q rating? It's kind of like a general favorite. I'm going to
Oh,
misquote
sure,
it.
yeah.
Your general favorability, if people say, I like that person, I want to have a beer with that person. I mean, you are tanking the show with these unrelatable elitist stances.
Well, I mean, have a beer with that person is a very controversial statement.
Oh,
I'll
that
have
brings
you
us to our
know.
next topic. Should we go into it?
It does. Nice
Oh
transition.
boy. Yeah, that we don't even try to transition. So I'm we just fell backwards into it, but apparently should we start with Peter Attia? Because we've seen
Let's
this with
talk about
multiple
it.
people now, but you texted me the other day and said that Peter Attia, who is Peter Attia, MD on the internet, you said people are mad at him. And I was trying to be honest, he's so all over the place. It was even hard to kind of sort out any like controversy. I like Googled his name and like all sorts of negative words to see if I could figure out what was wrong. And he has so much stuff that's just out there and people kind of like raving about it that I couldn't even find any kind of buzz about it. So why are people mad at Peter Attia?
So Peter Attia was on a few talk shows recently, including 60 Minutes, and talking the usual things about longevity. And his usual shtick is that, well, he used to promote um, fasting, even multi-day fasting, which
Yeah, he's
was
a big
problematic.
fasting guy.
But I think these days he's sort of backtracked from some of those claims, but he's a big exercise advocate. A lot of the anger was that he has a clinic that is extremely expensive. So if you actually want to work with him, it is costly. And he also promotes, like VO2 max testing is like the epitome of longevity testing. Grip strength and working for grip strength is what we all need to be doing for our health. But the particular controversy in this recent interview was about alcohol consumption because he said that he drinks, and he tries not to drink more than like 6 or 7 drinks per week. And people thought, well, if you are promoting longevity, then you are a hypocrite for saying that you drink alcohol. And people were really outraged by that admission in the interview, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also saw this. There's the Peter Attia part. I also saw not just someone commenting on something that Lane Norton said, who's a PhD in nutrition and works in the fitness space, but they actually made one of those like stitch reels. Is that what they
Hmm.
call them? You're the social media personality. Basically like stitching a thing of him, or no, it was like just a
Like
video.
a response video,
Yeah, but it was
essentially.
basically I don't know if they actually stitched original material. Yeah, they did. But they were just talk they were made a whole video about him that seemed like it took a lot of effort. And it was the same kind of thing. It was him just saying like basically paraphrasing here obviously. He was like, "Yeah, it seems like alcohol's bad. It seems like there's like really not a good level of alcohol intake contrary to what we used to believe." But he basically said like I like to go out and kind of relax a little bit, have a drink or two every so often, and he said I think it has a net positive effect for me just because it is something that it's wrapped into my social life, and it helps me relax and kind of enjoy my days a little more is basically what he said.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was like a very angry video about like because of that he's a complete fraud and science is canceled, which I just don't understand. Like, first of all, Lauren, I was talking to someone who knows about finance. I need to make sure I die pretty young. Like I don't have the assets to do this whole longevity live forever thing. So that's the first thing. Second thing is I feel like the pitch that we're getting from a lot of longevity people are like, listen, since we all have a net worth of at least 25 to 60 million dollars, clearly we all want to live forever because our compound interest is going to float us into a comfortable retirement for 700 years if we get it. Therefore, we need to make sure that we live forever and every day is just completely miserable. We need to find every element of things we enjoy in this life and make sure that we just don't do them ever. And Lauren, you might remember when I was a kid, people would say everything in moderation. That is over. Moderation
Yeah.
is canceled. We're not doing it anymore. Moderation it was left in the 90s with all the other fads and grunge music and all that stuff. So I just don't really like this trend, Lauren, and I don't understand what I don't understand what people want. Like I feel like every time I get on the internet, it's people who are saying like, you, specifically you, are not allowed to be talking about this. And it doesn't matter who the you is or what they're talking about. There seems to be a tremendous amount of policing of, like you said, Lauren, a man, I don't care if you've been studying menopause for 30 years and you're a practicing physician who treats women, you are not allowed to talk about, the perimenopausal period. And also, you are not allowed to talk about longevity if you have a beer every now and then. So we're going to be running out of people who are able to talk about things, Lauren, which is going to be a huge crisis for the internet. It's just going to be AI generated slop and nothing else.
Yeah, it's frustrating because there's just so much polarizing information that's not realistic for most people. I commented on a post by Vonda Wright. She was sprinting on a treadmill wearing pearls inexplicably, but I didn't comment about the pearls. I just commented about the exercise because it was this whole argument that sprint interval training is the best thing you can do for your health, and it's so much better in this way, that way, the other for than moderate intensity training. And I just made a comment that sure, it's great if you enjoy it, if you can do it safely, but if we're talking about the claims that you're making, like changing body composition, it's sprint interval training ain't it. And frankly, neither is moderate intensity cardio. It's your diet. And so it feels really irresponsible to tell people that they must do a thing that many people can't do safely and don't enjoy. And so I don't understand why we are I mean, the collective we, promoting messaging that makes people feel like they are failing every single step of the way. And I'm not a Peter Attia apologist. I think a lot of the things he says are not very evidence based. I think some of the longevity stuff that he puts out there, it's sort of missing the point. It's like a misinterpretation of the data from somebody who doesn't really understand what we're researching. Like yeah, we measure grip strength in older people because it's the easiest thing to measure. Like you don't take an 85-year-old and have them do a 1 rep max squat or deadlift. It's not reasonable. That doesn't mean we need to be training our grip strength. That said, if you're gonna have somebody who speaks publicly and says, and by the way, I'm a human who doesn't make an evidence-based decision every minute of every day, that just feels like being a normal person, because who among us doesn't do that? So that's where I feel like, what are we doing here? Do you eat candy sometimes? Like, is that the best thing for your health? Like, do you drink soda sometimes? Is that the best thing for your health? Do you have fast food sometimes? Is that like all the things
Yeah.
that like so I don't really, if we're trying to say really rigidly that if you don't make the healthiest decision every minute of every day, then you are a charlatan and you can't say anything about health, then is that a realistic message? I don't know.
It's also interesting because we almost were dealing with the inverse problem for a while, where people people would almost accuse you of having biases that just reinforce what you prefer to do, and so like in a lot of cases, and it may not be preference, but it may be you kind of leaning into things that you happen to have working in your favor. So like an example would be, back in the day, I would make content about the very strong science indicating that there are certain BMI ranges at which it's going to be very difficult to have, optimized or near optimized cardiometabolic health outcomes. There are certain elevated BMI categories where we do see very reliable increases in risk of various chronic diseases that are cardiometabolic in nature. And when I would make that content back when I was in really, really good shape, people would say, you're just body shaming because you're one of those idiot fit pros who thinks everyone should have the same body fat you do. And then I got fat, and first of all, everyone on the internet would harass me every time I posted anything and ask if I got stung by a bee or if I just have a fat face. And then, like, Yeah, so, but I would still, even though my BMI had entered those categories where there are risk elevations, I could still make that content and say, yes, I would benefit from a health perspective from getting my BMI back down to where it used to be, or my body fat percentage, and my blood sugars or my blood pressure is a little high. But like, it's interesting because it's like if you're not living everything you advocate for, now people call you a hypocrite. But back in the day, people would accuse you of other nefarious things if you were just like, if you were a skinny person saying that low BMIs tend to correlate better with cardiometabolic health outcomes. So all that is to say, everyone chill, everyone relax. If you really want evidence-based information, you should not have to run it through a filter of, does this person apply it every single day? Like, I mean, for me, I've done a lot of research on caffeine. I can tell you what the papers say in terms of an appropriate daily intake. I exceed that intake by like 10 a.m. and I keep on trucking, right? Like it's I don't need the literature to fit my lifestyle, nor do I necessarily need to fit my lifestyle to the literature if I simply don't feel compelled to. It should be enough for an audience who are, or a viewership who's into evidence-based stuff to say, here is the recommendation that seems to be best supported by the literature. What I do with that in my personal life should mean absolutely nothing to you unless you want to view me as a role model, which you shouldn't. Like, it doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, I posted something on weighted vests, which is always a mistake. Um, and someone has been just fighting with me relentlessly, saying, "Have you ever tried one? Like, you try it." And I'm like, it's not about me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to try every fad to comment on the evidence because it's irrelevant. And my personal experience wouldn't be an evidence-based perspective. It would be an anecdote.
Yeah. For once in Lauren's life, she acknowledges it's not all about her, and
That's fair.
we got it on camera.
There you go.
All right. Do you have a preference about where we go next? We've got many options here, and I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of them.
Yeah. Well,
First of all, I'm curious, so I'll let that guide the way as you ponder the next one. I feel like this one's going to be short. This one says the cube rule of food identification, as seen in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Webby Awards, Maryland courts. I don't know what this is all about, but the cube rule. It says first they asked, are hot dogs sandwiches? So, Lauren, can you just give me a brief overview of what the cube rule is, and I'm going to show it up on the screen here.
yes. So we actually got this from multiple people,
Okay.
and this is going back to some of our earlier content on sandwiches and what is a sandwich. And I don't even remember because it was so long ago, but I think we discussed hot dogs, but then it really spiraled into like Pop Tarts and quesadillas. And so this basically gives us a framework from which to frame how we can classify food in this manner.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So this is interesting. So I kind of scrolled down if folks are watching on YouTube through the preamble, which is, this whole argument about hot dogs and tacos and sandwiches and different legal considerations and rulings. But they present a pretty unified model here. It's called the Cube Rule of Food, which is on the screen right now on YouTube. It says, basically we've got, they have a cube, an outline of it, and one shape makes toast, a different shape makes sandwich, a different shape makes a taco, a different shape makes sushi, a different shape makes a soup or salad in a bread bowl, and then finally a full cube represents the calzone family of foods. So it's all about, if you imagine mentally a cube, where is the starch going? So for sushi, we basically have the outer portions of the cube with a hole through the cube where you would find the fish and etc. Taco obviously is a topless version of that sushi, and so on and so forth. So this is really interesting. Now here's where it might get. It might get a little bit. Now that I'm digging in, this is controversial. It says for toast, examples include pizza and pumpkin pie, uh, which I would not have originally called a toast. For sandwich, they have quesadilla, a sponge cake, and I feel like just to be controversial, they put toast in the sandwich category rather than toast. But it's two pieces of bread with something between it. So I guess it's like a fancy toast with a thing in the middle. So that's very controversial of them. For taco, they have a hot dog, a club sandwich, and then a slice of pie, which they call a taco on its side. This, of course, being a pie with a crust on the top rather than a pumpkin pie, which has no crust on the top.
Right.
So it's all about the starch positioning. Sushi would include a falafel wrap, an enchilada, and pigs in a blanket, the Midwestern favorite. Interesting. So five, as I scroll down, now they're calling it quiche, but they had previously called it soup, salad, bread bowl. So I guess five officially we're calling it quiche. And that would include cheesecake, soup in a bread bowl, or a falafel pita. Wow, they're putting deep dish pizza and key lime pie in the quiche category. That's interesting. And then in calzone, we have a whole pie and a corn dog as well. And oh my God, in calzone, they have dumplings, Pop Tarts, and Uncrustables. Lauren, does Canada know about Uncrustables? Do you have them up there?
I think so.
Yeah, so if you're not
I've never
aware,
personally had one. I don't
an
think.
Uncrustable is basically like a circular ravioli of bread uh, with like crimped edges and peanut butter and jelly in the middle. And do they sell them frozen?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
definitely frozen.
So, and do you heat them up or do you thaw
It's
them?
like a microwavable, like PB&J type
I'm
situation,
sorry.
like a hot pocket, but it's a PB&J.
Can I be honest? I think what really baffles me the most about Uncrustables is that I can't imagine a food that is harder to store or prepare or just generally make available than regular peanut butter and jelly. And they're like, we need to simplify peanut butter and jelly and turn it into this Uncrustable. Or maybe, I mean, maybe the problem they were trying to solve is simply that crust is completely untenable. I don't know. But I tell you what, Lauren, I was skeptical about this segment, but now that I'm into it, I think this is really cool. So, folks, cuberule.com is the URL. I encourage you to dig in and you know what? Weigh in on the controversies. Our email is always open, frontpagefitnesspodcast@gmail.com.
And two separate listeners sent me this. One identifies as a layperson, and the other did not specify, but just for context.
Yeah. So, Lauren, I think we can hit some stuff rapid
Mhm.
fire here.
Let's do it.
First thing is, what is bacteria maxing? It sounds absolutely horrific.
This is uh, this creator is approximately 10 years old and is trying to fight with all of the evidence-based people on the internet.
Okay.
And he's promoting bacteria maxing, which is like chugging raw milk and eating a lot of raw meat and yelling on TikTok. And this is why you should never go on TikTok. Don't do it. I made the mistake of doing it. Like, don't go on Threads, don't go on TikTok. These are places that we should all avoid. That's my health advice for the week.
I'm going to make a bold assumption here. Is this a Florida man? Because I'm looking at the video you posted, and it looks like he's in a setting that is consistent with Florida. So we need to look into this and figure out if this is, in fact, Florida man who's making these claims. But basically, it looks.
Florida boy would be more appropriate.
Yeah, but it looks like he's basically doing something between like getting really into prebiotic or probiotics or like fermented foods, and then also just trying to give himself foodborne illnesses. Is that pretty much?
Yeah, he's an ancestral enthusiast.
Okay. Well, there you go. Fair enough. A lot of our ancestors, they would often cook meat. I don't know if like the
Did they drink raw milk? I don't know the answer to that. I
well, I'm sure the first milk that was drank by humans would have been certainly raw. We were doing it for a while before we figured out pasteurization, particularly up in Europe and whatnot. But but yeah,
They
we
didn't live that long. P.S.
true. But we really enjoyed cooking. Like that's like a very 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 human thing. So I don't know why the ancestral people just like they got really into the idea of like how would we have eaten in this fabricated scenario, but like they seem to reject the fact that we do have evidence of how that how that would have gone, and we're pretty certain that cooking was kind of a big deal. We very much
Also,
enjoyed
if
it.
you're gonna live that way, then why don't you reject electricity and indoor plumbing?
It's a good question. Lauren, a listener sent me something about this is awful. I try not to bring the show into the gutter because you do it plenty without me, but it was fart maxing. It was basically someone who was just eating a bunch of stuff that was going to make them like fart really bad. And my response to the listener was that we have a global leisure time crisis. Um, my belief, my sincere belief, looking at bacteria maxing and fart maxing now is and the way I sent it, I sent a message to the viewer. I said, in a sufficiently busy society, these things would never occur. And so my thesis for understanding the world around me is that, people are like, oh, we're so busy in the modern day, we're so stressed out. No, we are not nearly busy enough, nor are we nearly stressed out enough. Because truly busy and stressed out people, Lauren, are not fart maxing. And they're certainly not bacteria maxing. And they're certainly not making 4 TikToks a day about how they're
Either
making
one.
themselves fart too much. Okay, so this is my challenge to you. Make the society that I envision where everyone is just dramatically more busy and stressed, so that we don't have time for this stuff. Does that sound
So
fair?
if you were gonna invent a new type of maxing with two X's, what would it be?
Work maxing. Everyone go to work.
That's boring.
Stop making TikToks and making yourself sick and giving yourself severe indigestion and foodborne illness as a hobby. Like I'm not saying people shouldn't have hobbies, but if your hobbies are giving yourself indigestion and foodborne illness, stop having hobbies. Go work instead. There are coal mines all over the world in which you could, hop in there, bring out some rocks. It's a good solution. All right, Lauren.
Someone said mass maxing. I like it.
Mass maxing. See, I did that, and then the internet harassed me every time. Oh, mass the publication. Okay.
Yeah, that thing that we do every month.
Yeah, I thought they meant just like bulking up really hard. I was gonna say I tried that. People hated me. Um, okay, so by the way, check out the Mass Research Review. It's very good. I think you'll like it. MassResearchReview.com. That is the plug. Um, all right, Lauren. Real briefly here. I think maybe we could talk about punk parody. Is that the username there?
That's the email.
That's the email. So this individual emailed, they want to grow their traps, delts, and sternocleidomastoids. I don't hear that often, Lauren, but they do.
Never heard it.
The question is, how can I grow my legs, which are second priority, without growing my glutes at all? So this person has very targeted hypertrophy goals. What say you, Lauren?
Well, uh, growing your legs without growing your glutes, I would say you want to prioritize leg extensions, leg curls, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, you can do maybe sissy squats, like something that biases your quads, but every traditional leg exercise is going to work your glutes to some extent. So if you really wanted to avoid any glute stimulation, then you're a bit more limited.
Yeah. Do you notice a meaningful glute stimulus when you do leg press? Because for me, that was always very minimal glute involvement, very, very quad heavy, the way that I do leg presses.
Well, I think if you do them with your feet lower down on the plate and your
Yeah.
legs a little bit closer together versus kind of high and wide with a slight turnout, then it does feel different.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've never prescribed a program to anyone who said I want zero glute. He actually in his email he said he wanted to atrophy his glutes. So I've never had this request. So if we're trying to be really extreme about it, I could certainly say, oh, if we want to bias growth this way or that way, then there are there are ways that we can perform these exercises. But if you're saying I want to lose glute muscle mass, which why?
Yeah.
It's
It's
like let's not do that.
listen.
Glute muscle mass is important.
Rule number one of being a fitness coach, in my opinion, and this is you can't just do this on a cold email and response. But whenever I have clients who have goals that hit my ear a little wrong like that, I'm like, okay, what you got to do is sit down with them, say, what's going on here? You don't have to defend yourself, but I'm just curious, why are we trying to atrophy the glutes? What's going on here? And try to approach that conversation very open-minded, make sure that people feel comfortable communicating and not going to feel judged by what they say. But yeah, it's certainly not one I've heard of very often. And I mean, who doesn't want big glutes? Everybody wants big glutes. It's the sign of a powerful, powerful physique. But Lauren, what's your
I will say, there was a time where I was doing a lot of upper body exercise where my traps were fully taking over and I was getting very large traps. And I did want to solve that
Oh
problem.
yeah.
And so I needed to be more mindful of the way that I was performing the exercises so I wasn't just muscling it all in my
No, yeah,
traps.
I've heard all sorts of, oh, I wish my shoulders weren't quite as big or my traps weren't quite, those are common ones. Even pecs sometimes I've heard that. So yeah, I've heard that for many things. But for glutes, this is definitely a first. Seeing sternocleidomastoids was that one kind of gave me chills down my spine. I did a study on brown adipose tissue activation when I was working on my PhD. And so I had to go through MRI images slice by slice, which is just the most
Ooh.
tedious thing you could imagine. And I had to manually outline activated regions of brown adipose tissue, or these very specific regions within different areas. And in one area, I had to kind of do like little cross sections of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So I had to sort.
Which is in the neck, by the way.
Yeah, it's in like the front of your neck, but I had to sort through all these little like long narrow muscles that were in there and kind of sort through them and make sure I had the right one. It was like I remember looking like it was in a hospital setting, and so there was like some smelling salts just like taped to the table next to me for emergency purposes, and I looked at them longingly more than a few times. They're just like, I'm bored out of my mind. And would anyone miss it if I just kind of gave a little whiff of the smelling salts just to keep trucking?
Mm.
So no one's making a fan of me by bringing up the sternocleidomastoid. But to answer the question here, traps and delts, that's easy. Shrug, 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 press, 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 lateral raise, lateral raise. Get some rear delt stuff in there. And then sternocleidomastoids, hey, you can do direct neck work. Ease into it at first.
Oh,
Otherwise, you're going to feel like you
I do
got
that.
whiplash from like a car accident. You really got to ease into neck work, or else you're going to feel terrible. But what were you saying, Lauren? You're not a fan of direct neck work?
Oh, that freaks me out. I just think it's unnecessary.
Well, I mean, if you really want to talk again, this is a unique set of goals here. But if someone came to me
All
and
right.
said, "I want to grow my sternocleidomastoids," I'm not sure that I feel good about giving them anything else in the gym that's really going to move the needle there.
So, like, you want him to wear a weighted helmet and lift up his head.
There are harnesses that are made for direct neck training. Now, Lauren, I'm not in my athletic prime, but back in the day, I was quite fond of the sport of wrestling, where a strong neck is critical. And we would do a lot of direct neck training. You'll also find in a lot of combat sports, or not combat sports, combat and contact sports, there's a lot of direct neck training to try to minimize neck damage and also concussive impacts in collisions. So direct neck training is don't knock it till you try it, but also don't try it because I don't think it suits your goals, Lauren.
No, yeah, I don't want to.
But in line with our previous conversation, you have no right to speak about this until you've tried it.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, Lauren, is there anything else in the outline you wanted to hit, or should we wrap it up for the night?
I think that this has been an interesting conversation, wide-reaching, actually. We covered a lot of ground.
We covered. It's difficult because I feel like we covered a lot, and yet if I were to say that we made any strides or accomplished anything, I'd feel very conflicted about that. But we did cover things.
Yeah, maybe we need a wrap up, some sort of takeaway,
Um,
summary.
don't judge pies. Be open to them, especially if they're a refreshing kind of citrus-based pie. If you wouldn't look down your nose at a lemon meringue or a key lime pie, don't look down your nose at a Baja Blast pie. It's very unbecoming and unlikable.
But you have no right to comment because you haven't tried it.
Well, they're still available in stores. We'll see what we can do. The
If
problem is,
anyone tries it, please send us an email, frontpagefitnesspodcast@gmail.com.
it's just really tricky because I don't want a whole pie, and I fear that my wife, who's she's quite good at baking, I wouldn't feel comfortable asking her to try a Baja Blast pie.
Well, you can take the rest to your neighbors since you're so bullish about it.
Okay, I'll work on that. In addition, it's okay for people to do research about stuff even if they don't apply it rigidly to their own life. You can say that alcohol is unhealthy while still actually drinking a beer sometimes. When overhauling major policy about science, it would be good to have a scientific element of that process. Bacteria maxing and fart maxing are both an abomination, which would not be occurring in a sufficiently busy and sufficiently stressed out society. So we should all be working toward the latter to eliminate the former. The cube rule, as far as I can tell, represents a robust categorization system that I do encourage people to study. And if you want to grow muscles, you got to train the muscles. And if you want to atrophy muscles, you got to make sure that you're not training those muscles. But that is not an endorsement from me about trying to atrophy muscles because it is fundamentally against what I believe about the world around me. Is that a good summary?
Great.
All right, folks. I just want to say that the live chat was pretty lively tonight. Lauren, did you tell people we were going live?
About 15 minutes before we went live.
Listen, the Colenso-Semple Army, the CSA, is responsive, if nothing else. They are waiting with bated breath, ready to pounce at any moment. So really appreciate everyone jumping in the live chat, and not only jumping in, but actually chatting. A lot of good comments in there, and it was very helpful because someone told me that Lauren's voice was too loud right at the beginning, so I could actually fix it rather than have an entire hour of bad audio. So huge props to the LCSCS, what was it, LCS-CSCS? Lauren Colenso-Semple. Are you a strength and conditioning specialist?
I let it lapse, but I was.
Oh
once.
my God. So you used to be credible and now you're not?
I didn't want to pay the $300 a year or whatever it is.
Unbelievable. But we need to figure out all the acronyms, get those tightened up. But appreciate everyone in Lauren's rabid audience for jumping in there. Everyone, thank you so much. If you have questions, send them to frontpagefitnesspodcast@gmail.com. Everyone have a fantastic week, and we will see you in 7 days with yet another episode.